Up next in the broadcast, over in Berlin, President Park gets the nod of approval and a promise of support for her reunification push from German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Despite an agreement to stop cross-border mudslinging, North Korea specifically calls President Park thoughtless and ignorant for advocating denuclearization of North Korea at the Nuclear Security Summit. In quick follow-through to President Park's deregulation drive to spur the economy, the government pinpoints dozens of regulations to be amended immediately. Primetime News begins now.
Good evening to our viewers in Korea, and hello to those of you who are watching from around the world. It's Thursday, March 27th here in Seoul. I am Yoo Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin this evening in Berlin, where President Park Geun-hye has kicked off the third day of her state visit to Germany. The Korean leader, who has set unification as the main theme of the trip, started off the day by looking around art and photo exhibits that represent unification and freedom. She stopped by Berlin's East Side Gallery, which is what's left of the Berlin Wall, where more than 100 artists from around the world painted murals to commemorate the 1989 fall of the Berlin Wall that led to German unification. The president also met with a group of 5 former and current officials who were at the center of the historic German unification to seek their advice on how best to prepare for a unified Korea. Later Thursday, Park is expected to travel to the former East German Economic Center of Dresden and lay out details of her unification policies during a speech there. And during her summit talks with her German counterpart the day before, President Park secured full support from Germany in charting a course toward a unified Korea. President Park and German Chancellor Angela Merkel agreed to set up a cooperative system to prepare the Korean peninsula for social and economic unity.
독일이 갖고 있는 통일에 대한 어떤 경험, 또 지식 이런 것을 참고로 해서 우리 한반도에서도 평화 통일을 이루기 위해서 어떤 준비를 해야 할까 하는 것을 여러 가지로 구체화해 나가고자 합니다.
When asked about President Park's recent description of reunification on the Korean peninsula as a bonanza, Merkel said Germany's unification was indeed a bonanza.
A lot of economic support will be necessary in connection with a reunification. The second thing is that people should be prepared to get to know very different biographies.
President Park also garnered Merkel's support behind her trust-building policies towards North Korea and expansion of economic cooperation between the two sides in vocational training and science and technology. Meanwhile, North Korea, displeased with President Park Geun-hye's remarks at the Nuclear Security Summit, lashed out specifically at the South Korean leader. This comes amid worsening inter-Korean relations, which until recent weeks had shown signs of improving. Our Kwon So-hwa has more.
North Korea lobbed direct and coarse words at President Park Geun-hye once again, and with them broke a recent agreement made with South Korea. The spokesperson of the Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of the Fatherland, a North Korean organization dealing with reunification matters, told the North's official Korean Central News Agency that President Park's recent emphasis on denuclearizing North Korea was, quote, thoughtless and ignorant, and that she should watch what she says if she really wants to improve inter-Korean relations. The spokesperson also called President Park a, quote, faithful servant and stooge of the United States. The South Korean government says it regrets the disrespectful remarks.
North Korea claims that the South Korean government is slandering North Korea. However, we once again emphasize that this is not true.
The harshly worded comments mentioning President Park by name are the first since Pyongyang agreed to stop cross-border slandering. That came on February 14th at a high-level meeting between the two Koreas. The South Korean government says Pyongyang has violated the deal.
North Korea is lashing out at the emphasis placed on denuclearizing the North at the recent Korea-US-Japan meeting. The criticism against President Park Geun-hye seems to suggest the North wants to lead the nuclear issue by itself.
Despite the harsh words coming from the north and the high chance that more will come, experts say they're not likely to affect the current efforts to improve the relations on the Korean peninsula. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
It seems North Korea could soon face consequences for its latest ballistic missile launches.
A UN Security Council meeting is set for Thursday to talk about ways to punish the rogue state, while the U.S. Congress will also consider new sanctions on the North in May. Hwang Ji-hye has more.
The UN Security Council will hold discussions Thursday on ways to punish North Korea for its latest ballistic missile launches. The request for a special meeting came from the United States after Pyongyang test-fired 2 medium-range Nodong ballistic missiles into the EC. On Wednesday, Deputy U.S. State Department spokeswoman Marie Harf said Washington is already in talks with other members of the UN Security Council and its allies and partners to take appropriate measures against the North for its latest provocation.
But those are choices the North Korean government has to make. And we've been clear that the sanctions, the diplomatic isolation, the economic isolation, the political isolation, that will all continue as long as they don't.
She went on to emphasize the U.S. takes Pyongyang's latest military posturing seriously since it clearly violates UN Security Council resolutions banning the nation from any ballistic missile launches. In a related move, U.S. Congress will also consider North Korea sanctions legislation in May. Representative Ed Royce, chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, unveiled the schedule as he addressed a congressional hearing on North Korea's human rights abuses. Roy said his committee will do all it can to hold the North Korean leader and his aides responsible for crimes against humanity. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
The latest moves by the North definitely poses a big challenge to what have been recently improving relations between Pyongyang and Seoul.
For more on what we can read into North Korea's recent provocative acts and the prospect for inter-Korean relations, we're joined by Dr. Kim Chul-woo, Senior Research Fellow at the Korea Institute for Defense Analyses here in the studio. Thanks so much for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Kim, what do you make of North Korea's latest missile launches and its bellicose rhetoric towards President Park Geun-hye? Why do you think they're deliberately escalating tensions on the Korean peninsula?
Simply saying, they have such an angry mode. This apparent show of denial or defiance or displeasure, whatever, related to the North Korea's own survival scheme. The North Koreans are not test firing. That's just the fired Nodong missile, mid-range ballistic missiles. For the last 2 months, they fired more than 88 missiles and rockets. And now, with the Nodong missiles, and they are trying to show up their delivery tactics. Particularly this time, they fired these Nodong missile not just from Wonsan or Dongchangni with a fixed location, was Sokcheon, which is just north of Pyongyang, is from the mobile launchers, which means it's very hard to detect or destroy. So it's very hard to get the early warning.
Well, let's talk more about these missiles. Over the past 2 months, the missiles that were launched were short range, but with this recent provocation, they were mid-range. What's the meaning behind expanding the reach of these missiles?
So for the last 2 months of a series of saber rattling didn't work because of the composure of the Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington is relatively stable, unlike the other times. So North Koreans are trying to select the exact timing of the trilateral meeting, summit meeting, 2:35 in the morning and in the middle of the night. I think the North Koreans are trying to use the Nodong missiles to give the message even to Japan. It can reach up to the 1,300 kilometers.
So that means it can reach Japan.
It reached Japan. They're trying to make a message against the trilateral meetings agenda setting for North Korean denuclearization.
Well, almost every Nodong launches were followed by a nuclear test. Do you think it's more likely that North Korea will carry out its fourth nuclear test, or will they take a more of a wait-and-see approach in the upcoming meeting between the top nuclear negotiators of South Korea, U.S. and Japan?
North Korea is not that simple guy. They can, premeditate on what the benefits and cost of their, observed strange behavior. I think they hold back the last card of a fourth nuclear test, so-called, like you said, the wait-and-see gestures. But they can use another missile test, considering the so-called trilateral meetings implementation process, like the three nations nuclear envoys meeting here in Seoul or Tokyo, and then they can see the China's response. So China would have been to Pyongyang, and Pyongyang's counterpart been to Beijing. So at least out of 6 to 5 representatives can get together within a couple of weeks, or at least as fast as they can get together.
All right, Dr. Kim, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
If everything goes according to plan, Korea will have a leader fighting.
The President Park
Your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang's Sean Lim and Yoo Ji-hye from the heart of Seoul. Primetime news, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Next general elections.
The following its official launch on Wednesday, Korea's opposition coalition party hit the ground running this Thursday morning. The New Politics Alliance for Democracy held its first Supreme Council meeting where it put utmost priority in improving the country's welfare system. Our political correspondent Kim Young-gil has more.
화이팅! 화이팅! 지방 선거 승리와 국가 교체 화이팅! 화이팅! 화이팅!
The New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party set sail this Thursday with the opening of its first Supreme Council meeting. The new opposition party's co-leaders Kim Han-gil and An Chol-soo said their focus is on the people.
Our new alliance top priority will be enhancing the people's livelihoods. Our first lawmaking activities will be devoted to revising 3 existing welfare bills.
The proposed amendments to the 3 bills focus on reaching those most in need of financial help. If the revisions are passed, local governments will be able to assist people who are in need of urgent financial aid, with a particular emphasis on families who are having a hard time paying their water, electricity, and medical bills.
If our first revised welfare bill gets passed, some 1 million desperate families who are in need of financial help will receive it from the government.
The ruling Saenuri Party congratulated the newly unified opposition party, but with conditions attached.
We're keeping a close eye on the new party's pledge for strong national security and an innovative and growing economy. We'll have to wait and see how well those pledges are carried out.
Despite the new party's liberal base, it has vowed to adopt what they call conservative values. As for the June 4th local elections, Kim Han-an said that the New Politics Alliance for Democracy will not engage in a nomination process, saying it acts as a breeding ground for bribery and corruption. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
The Korean government says it's wasting no time to cut out the bureaucratic red tape that's holding back economic growth. Dozens of regulations have been picked out and will either be amended or abolished completely in the coming months. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
The government is speeding up its deregulatory reforms. Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok presided over the first ministerial-level meeting on the matter Thursday to inspect, evaluate, and come up with follow-up measures to President Park Geun-hye's 3-year economic innovation plan. They started with the recommendations proposed during working-level talks held earlier this week and pinpointed 52 regulations that could be improved, including one that would ultimately allow for the operation of food trucks. Hyun said 41 of the regulations can be addressed immediately, with 27 of them to be amended in the first half of this year.
Regulations that could be amended by administrative or in-house measures should be completed and ready to take effect by April. Regulations that require legislative amendments, let's get them done by the end of June.
For the operation of food trucks, the government will allow the remodeling of trucks with a loading capacity of at least 0.5 square meters. The food trucks will be able to do business in amusement and theme parks in the latter half of this year. The ministry says it is working with the Transport Ministry to cut regulations on the tuning of automobiles as well, so long as it does not affect passenger safety. The aim there is to promote the use of vehicles for leisure purposes, such as camping cars and caravans, to boost the country's auto components industry. A task force will also be launched to promote the country's service sector. An estimated 200,000 new jobs will be created through deregulation on the medical and education sectors alone. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
In a record-breaking sales year, Korean automobiles accounted for nearly 9% of cars sold in China in 2013. Now, Hyundai Motor wants to set the target even higher, with plans to build its fourth factory in China. Our Song Ji-sun reports on how the nation's cars are accelerating in Korea's largest export market.
Korea's two largest automakers logged a record 8.8% market share in China last year. That consolidates the Hyundai Kia Automotive Group as the third biggest auto brand in China. It's a significant feat considering the Korean auto group only entered the Chinese market around 10 years ago. Market leaders GM and Volkswagen have been in China for several decades. But the goal is to land a 10% share in the Chinese market, a figure that commonly guarantees stable growth in the auto industry. To that end, Hyundai Motor is building a new factory in China's Midwest. Hyundai Motor and Chongqing, the biggest city in the region, agreed Thursday to build their fourth local factory there. That means additional production of 300,000 cars a year, and with Kia Motors' 3 local factories, their combined production will now exceed 2.3 million cars a year. Even so, the aggressive move was necessary, as China's market leaders, Germany's Volkswagen Group and GM Motors of the US, will both have a production capability of around 4 million units by 2016. After recording over 20 million car sales last year, the Chinese auto market is expected to grow by 15% this year.
China is the biggest and fastest growing auto market in the world, with demand that is expected to reach 35 million cars by 2020. There's no other market of this size and momentum, making it the most attractive and important market for all global automakers.
Korean automakers must also refer research and development on green energy cars so they abide by Beijing's regulations aimed at tackling the country's chronic pollution problem. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Let's check on some of the stories making headlines on the global front, from the discovery of more possible debris from the missing Malaysian airliner to the latest report on the rising number of executions in the world. We go live to our Paulie at the News Center.
Paul, let's start with the new developments in the search for the wreckage from Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. What's the latest in the investigation?
Well, Thai satellite images have found 300 floating objects in the southern Indian Ocean near the remote area where an international contingent of aircraft and ships had been searching for pieces of the Boeing 777. According to the Geoinformatics and Space Technology Development Agency, the objects range from 2 to 15 meters in size and are scattered over an area located about 2,700 kilometers southwest of Australia. If confirmed, it would be the largest potential debris field yet spotted by satellites, supporting earlier French images of the possible crash site. The director of the agency told AFP that the latest information has been given to Malaysian authorities, but several days are still needed to process the data. Aircraft and ships will have to wait on following up on this latest clue, as gale force winds and severe thunderstorms halted search efforts for wreckage on Thursday. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 is widely presumed to have been lost at sea after mysteriously diverting from its course on March 8th with 239 people on board. Turning to Ukraine, the International Monetary Fund said Thursday that it would extend a rescue package between 14 to 18 billion US dollars, injecting some much-needed cash into the Ukrainian economy. The crisis-stricken nation will need to agree to tough reform measures, which experts say will have a large impact on the livelihoods of millions of its citizens. The IMF said the actual size of the financial bailout will be finalized once Ukraine's new Western-backed leaders implement the reforms. The United States has also pledged $1 billion in loan guarantees, with another $2.2 billion expected to come from the European Union. Moving now to Egypt, where the head of the country's armed forces has announced his bid for the upcoming presidential election. General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi officially declared his candidacy for president on Wednesday. The army chief who ousted Egypt's first freely elected leader, Mohamed Morsi, is widely expected to win, given his popularity and the lack of serious competitors. Al-Sisi made the announcement on state television, saying that he would retire his military uniform to defend the nation. The announcement also came hours after Egyptian authorities ordered some 900 members of the Muslim Brotherhood to stand trial on charges of murder, inciting violence, and sabotage. And finally, let's take a look at a new report from Amnesty International on the sharp rise of global executions. The report released Thursday shows at least 778 people were executed last year for crimes. That's a jump of about 100 from 2012. It also represents an increase of around 15% worldwide. However, the organization says the actual figure could be much higher, as it doesn't include the number of people executed in China, as the death penalty is a state secret. Amnesty mostly attributes the rise to an increase in executions in countries like Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. That wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Che. Now let's start with the ongoing controversy over the Sochi Olympics figure skating result. The International Skating Union President Otavio Cinquanta says that he's yet to receive South Korea's formal complaint. Cinquanta, who's in Japan for the World Figure Skating Championships, also said that hard evidence of the alleged unfair judging in Kim Yeon-ha's silver medal finish would have to be provided as well. The Korean Olympic Committee and Korea Skating Union said that they're still preparing the complaint. The ISU chief is not a stranger to controversy. He's received flack for suggestions to drop the figure skating short program and to get rid of some speed skating events at the Olympics. And moving on, South Korea took home the male and female overall titles at the World Taekwondo Federation World Junior Championships in Taiwan. In the junior male division, Korea took the top spot with 2 gold medals, 1 silver and 2 bronzes for a total of 63 points, beating out Russia by 9. Meanwhile, for the females, Korea earned 1 gold, 2 silvers and 2 bronzes for 49 points, successfully defending its title from last year. Meanwhile, a former Formula One doctor has warned fans of Michael Schumacher to expect the very worst. Dr. Gary Hartstein wrote on his blog that the former F1 champion lost crucial time going to a non-neurosurgical medical center right after the accident in December. He criticized the rescue system for the inefficiency. And regarding his comatose state, Hartstein added that the longer it took for Schumacher to awaken, the lesser the chance of a recovery. And shifting gears to tennis, the world number 2 Novak Djokovic handed a defeat to defending champion Andy Murray to advance to the Sony Open semis. But the win was mired in controversy. Murray was down 6-5 in the first set when his opponent crossed over the net and slammed the winner. The chair umpire said nothing, while Murray objected to no avail, and it seemed to bother him until the very end. Well, both were cordial in their post-match interviews, but you could bet that Murray was still stinging from the loss. Now let's get to the KBL playoff semifinals. The SK Knights and the Mobis Phoebus clashed in Seoul. Now with the series tied at a game apiece, both teams were in it to win it. It's the first half. Mobis' Moon Tae-young leads his team to a 5-point lead going into halftime. Well, SK stays at their heels thanks to Aaron Haynes and company. but they just can't overtake them. Mobis wins 67-62 to go up 2-1 in the series, continuing on Saturday. And that's all I have for now. This has been Stephen Che. I'll see you back here later for more from the world of sports.
It was a smoggy but warm day here in Seoul, and tomorrow looks to be warmer than today.
For more, let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung.
Good evening, guys. It really feels like spring with the warm temperatures and the blooming flowers. Today, daytime highs in Seoul will reach 20.4 degrees and numbers will jump up to 23 degrees tomorrow. This is about 10 degrees higher than the seasonal average. The early summer-like weather is largely due to warm air moving in from the southwest. But just when we thought everything was perfect, fine dust is back. Earlier today, levels soared to 120 micrograms per cubic meter in Seoul, and that's now down to 95 micrograms. Tomorrow's daytime highs will peak from between 21 to 26 degrees, so make the most out of it as showers are on their way on Saturday. Otherwise, Jeju may get less than 5 millimeters of precipitation late tomorrow night. Taking a look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul, Daegu, and Gwangju reach the mid-20s, while Busan tops out at 19. Moving on to other regions. Daejeon and Jeju peak at 24 and 21 degrees, while Dokdo and Mount Kumgang hit the mid-teens. That's all for now, and back to you guys.
Thanks, Bo-kyung. And that's a broadcast on this Thursday night. I'm Yoo Ji-hae in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.